सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So we are reading in the chapter which is the integration of personality and inner poise from the book Meditation and Spiritual Life. We are on page 238 in the section The Individual and the Universe. Did you ever consider that the laws of thought ordain that it is not possible for us to have an idea of individual consciousness without having at least a vague idea of infinite consciousness? What to us is a logical necessity, we found well established as an experience in the great disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. For them, the individual consciousness was a part or an expression of the universal consciousness. It was this that made them cosmocentric instead of egocentric. And they made us feel that cosmic consciousness, which includes all forms of individual consciousness, was a unity in diversity. To hold that consciousness is the essence of personality does not imply any denial of the mind, the senses and the body, which are the instruments of knowledge and action. Our mind is one amongst many similar minds. Our body is one amongst many bodies. So, here too comes the question of the individual and the universal, of the microcosm and the macrocosm on the planes of mind and matter. Hindu teachers speak of three kinds of akasha, space: mahakasha, or the elemental or physical plane, chitta akasha, or the mental plane, and chidakasha, or the plane of the spirit. The individual body is a part of the cosmic body, which is like an ocean of matter. The individual mind is a part of the cosmic ocean of mind. The individual ego in consciousness is a part of the cosmic consciousness. The macrocosm is like the ocean and the microcosm like the wave. Now, of the two, the ocean and the wave, which is more real? The ocean is certainly more real than the wave. The wave too has its reality, but it is a reality dependent on that of the ocean. This is also true of our quote-unquote personality, consisting of our individual consciousness, our individual mind, and our individual body, which form parts of a universal consciousness, a universal mind, and a universal body, respectively. Here we come to the ancient conception of the cosmic being out of which all beings and things have come into existence and in which they all live and move. The Vedas say the cosmic being has innumerable heads, innumerable eyes, and innumerable feet. It is he that has encompassed the whole universe, and it is he again who transcends it. That being is this whole cosmos, all that is, all that was, and all that will be. He manifests himself in the form of all. He is also the Lord and giver of immortality. The manifested universe reflects his glory and forms only a small portion of his being in the main. He remains unmanifest and immutable. This is from the Rig Veda 10.90, 1-3, the Purusha Sutta. In order to understand the individual, we must know something of the universal. Do you know the ancient story of Socrates and the Brahmin sage? A Brahmin sage from India went to Greece and met Socrates, who told him, "The greatest study is the study of man." But the Brahmin asked, "How can you know man unless you have known God, the all-pervading being?" We can get a correct idea of the individual being only in the background of the universal. We can understand individual personality only in the background of the cosmic personality. According to the religious view, man is a spiritual being. His personality is made up of not only body and mind, but also of soul. Behind the individual soul, which holds together the mind and the senses and the body, is the supreme spirit, the nirvana of Buddhism, the Brahman of Vedanta, the God of all religions. Being established in this high spiritual consciousness, a Buddha, a Christ, or a Ramakrishna could laugh at temptations, and even death to them was a passage to immortality. This attitude is not possible for the psychologically conditioned individual or for an ordinary religious human being. The stability which even partially illumined souls attain is much higher than that which psychology can promise. Psychology, however, can render very valuable service. It has its own value as a preliminary technique, but religion goes much farther and achieves results far beyond the scope of psychology. One of the important contributions of modern psychology to human well-being is its concept of, quote, integration of personality, unquote. By the discovery of the unconscious, psychologists have shown that ordinary men usually know very little about the depths of their own minds. The conscious mind usually remains cut off from the unconscious mind, which dominates it nevertheless. This creates division and conflicts within the personality. Psychologists like Dr. Jung have stressed the need for integrating the unconscious and conscious parts of the personality. Next section, what is integration of personality? Now, let us consider what is meant by the word integration. An integer is a complete unity, a whole, not a fraction or mixed number. To integrate it is to form into a whole, to unite or become united so as to form a complete or perfect whole. There are various kinds of integration. According to modern physical sciences, matter is composed of molecules, molecules are composed of atoms, and atoms are composed of still smaller particles. Modern physicists tell us that atoms are composed of protons or positive units of electricity and an equal number of electrons or negative units. The protons are concentrated in the nucleus, which also contains neutral particles called neutrons. The electrons are extranuclear and are supposed to be constantly orbiting the nucleus. Do you realize that this means that each atom is like a solar system with all its components uniting to form a whole? The atoms in their turn form parts of a greater whole. Similarly, every cell in our body is like a tiny solar system and is an organism by itself. All such units form parts of a greater unit we call a tissue. The tissues in their turn form parts of a greater unit we call the body. In an integrated body, while all the organs have their individual movements, they all must coordinate with the general movement. When this is not the case, disharmony or illness is the result. So, it is necessary for us to see that our body is properly integrated or harmonized. All parts of body should be healthy and strong and must work in harmony. Let us now come to the mind. Our mind is a synthetic whole consisting of the faculties of cognition, feeling, and willing. How our reasoning, feeling, willing, and action are at war with one another and create a terrible confusion within ourselves. There may be conflict of duties, conflicts of moral standards, conflict of spiritual ideals. We may become a whirlpool of emotions. So here too lies the need for integration, which stands for purity and strength and harmony. Let me now consider the ego. We all know that the ego is perverse and how it is constantly changing its center of gravity. It is now identified with outside things, next moment with the body, then with the senses or the mind. It is mad and is running the risk of tumbling down any moment. How at times it becomes too much one-pointed, centered on itself. We forget that our individual consciousness is a part of an infinite consciousness. We forget that the welfare of our fellow beings is inseparable from our own. We become egocentric, selfish, and mean, a danger to ourselves, to our family and society. So, here too we need another kind of integration. Thus, integration has its physical aspect, its mental aspect, and also its spiritual aspect. In a properly integrated personality, the ego or individual consciousness is in tune with the universal consciousness, and the integrated individual consciousness directs and guides the mind and the body in a harmonious, intelligent, and spontaneous way. This is what we understand by integration proper. Next section, steps towards integration. This may appear to be too high an ideal for many people, but it is good to have a high ideal instead of a low one. However, having a high ideal in view, we must follow the path step by step with infinite patience and perseverance. In order to start on our journey, we must find out where we stand. This is what we do when we wish to climb the mountains. This is also what we should do when we want to achieve a high ideal in our own lives. We must be realistic, find out the real conditions of our body, mind, and ego. One of the greatest lessons I learned sitting at the feet of my master and other disciples of Sri Ramakrishna was the ideal of harmonious growth, physical, intellectual, moral, and spiritual. The body, our physical instrument, must be kept fit and efficient. It is necessary for us to have a new attitude towards the body. It is neither an instrument for the sense gratification nor a mass of filth to be hated and neglected. The body is primarily a temple of the divine spirit and must be kept clean and strong. A Sanskrit passage says, "The body is like a raft, and with the Guru as the helpsman, and with the favorable wind of God's grace, if a man does not make use of it to cross the ocean of phenomenal existence, he should be called a suicide, a killer of his own spiritual self." So this is from the Bhagavatam 11.20.17. I will try to read it. Nrideha madhyam sulabham sudurlabham plavam sankalpam guru karnadharam mayanukulena nabhasvat teritam puman bhavabhyam na teratsa atmaha. The body must be nourished with pure food which brings energy, strength, health, and cheerfulness. Along with proper food, we must take fresh air and exercise, avoiding drugs, stimulants, and intoxicants. From next section, from disintegration to integration. By becoming a slave of passions, the man in whom the higher moral consciousness is awakened, whose spirit is willing but whose flesh is weak, creates a great discord and disharmony within himself. His personality becomes disintegrated. On the other hand, by giving a spiritual turn to the passions, by sublimating and purifying them, the aspirant comes to possess greater and greater harmony and integration within himself. Now, we must aim at still higher integration and try to coordinate our thinking, feeling, and willing. Our consciousness is usually associated with one of these faculties which dominates the rest. We may be over-intellectual or too emotional, or it may be that we have too strong a will and want to be active without caring for reason or higher emotions. This creates a cleavage within ourselves. We must coordinate the faculties. But how? We must learn to dissociate ourselves from all the faculties and come to our individual consciousness, make it the subject of our meditation, and keep it steady. When from this detached state we come back to the faculties, we are able to coordinate them and make them work in a spirit of harmony for the common good. This is a great achievement. A noted psychologist remarks about a patient whose inner conflicts were resolved through analysis, who attained a measure of psychological poise. Quote, his center of gravity, which had been centered in others, came to rest within himself. Unquote. It is true that by the right kind of psychological treatment, the center of gravity may be brought to rest deep within an integrated personality. But the highest and surest poise can be attained in the case of an average mortal only by passing stage after stage through systematic moral and spiritual practice. Anger, hatred, untruthfulness, greed, unchastity, or helpless dependence on others. These shift the center of gravity away from our essential integrity and create conflict and discord. On the other hand, purity and self control make us masters of ourselves and generate harmony and peace. In other words, Ganapati, mute yourself. On the other hand, purity and self control make us masters of ourselves and generate harmony and peace. In other words, they lead to integration of our personality. The secret of integration of a personality lies in where exactly our quote unquote center of gravity unquote is. By the term center of gravity, we mean the center of our consciousness, our I consciousness. The first step towards integration is to locate this center in the proper place. Other people may be the center of our consciousness, in which case our center of gravity lies wholly outside us, and we are upset by the attitudes of others. Our body or our emotions may be our center of consciousness. All this tilt our personality and lead to its disintegration. We must first of all separate our I consciousness and locate it in our innermost soul. We must learn to discriminate between the seer and the seen. Know that our emotions are different from the seer, the true I. We can learn to disentangle ourselves from our emotions. As we learn to look upon them as something different from our true selves, we get the upper hand of them. This in turn gives us the ability to face the realities of life boldly and to control our mind and its activity. Next section, integration of personality in the universal spirit. We saw that the first step towards integration of personality was to locate and fix our center of gravity, our center of consciousness in the proper place. The second step is to connect the center, the individual self or ego, with the universal self. From the standpoint of our highest ideal, the egocentric integration advocated by modern psychologists, however useful it may be in giving our ego a mastery over the mind, the senses, and the body, is not enough. We have not yet striven for the highest integration. This we must do next. Dr. Jung writes in his book, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, the ego is ill for the very reason that it is cut off from the whole and has lost its connection with mankind as well as with the spirit. So this is from Carl Jung, Modern Man in Search of Our Soul, published in 1953, page 141. In another book, he makes a still more significant remark. To be in Tao means fulfillment, wholeness, complete realization of the meaning of existence innate in things. Personality is Tao. This is from Carl Jung, The Integration of Personality, published 1952, page 305. Tao is the invisible, ungraspable, infinite source of life, the abode of truth, the origin of all things. Tao corresponds to the cosmic spirit, the universal being of the Hindu sages. How are we to bring the ego in touch with the universal? With the help of prayer or hymns, by repeating mystic words and dwelling on their meaning, by meditating on the divine reality, we can create such a quote unquote music in our soul, such a harmonious state within us that we rise above our little personality, our little ego, our individual consciousness. Then we feel the touch of the true superego, the cosmic consciousness that lies in us all. It is in this state that the cosmic spirit is realized to be more real than the individual's consciousness. Here, the deepest integration takes place. When the soul comes back to normal consciousness, to the plane of the ego, the mind, and the body, it feels a remarkable integration. Then the individual consciousness remains rooted in the universal, and the spiritualized ego remains in tune with the mind and the body, which act as its most obedient servants. Here, personality remains integrated in the one impersonal and universal being. Once Swami Vivekananda was visiting a cattle town in western United States. Hearing him speak of philosophy, a number of university men who had become cowboys took him at his word. When he said that one who had realized the light was able to keep one's equanimity under all conditions, they decided to put him to test. They invited Swamiji to lecture to them and placed a wooden tub bottom up on the ground to serve as a platform. Vivekananda commenced his address and was soon lost in his subject. Suddenly there was a terrific racket of pistol shots and bullets whizzed past his head. Undisturbed, Swamiji continued to lecture as though nothing unusual was happening. And this is taken from Eastern and Western Disciples' Life of Swami Vivekananda, published in 1974, page 328. This was spiritual poise, born of spiritual illumination, in which the center of gravity had come to rest not in the physical personality, but in the divine consciousness, the soul of one soul. Such illumination brings an entirely new outlook to a man or a woman. Sufism is the mystical aspect of Islam. Rabia was a woman Sufi saint of the Middle Ages who used to remain absorbed in divine consciousness. One day somebody asked her, "Do you love God?" And she replied, "Truly, I love him." "And do you regard the evil one as an enemy?" With a smile, the saintly lady replied, "I love the Lord so much that I do not trouble myself about the evil one." Her soul was in communion with God, and this enabled her to remain unruffled in the midst of the violence and turbulence of the harsh world around her. This is the lesson we learn from the saints and sages. They are endowed with great inner poise. They have integrated personalities and remain unbreakable even under the heavy bludgeonings of chance. Such a rare and blessed personality sees the Supreme Spirit within himself and in all beings. His mind is not shaken by misery or overpowered by happiness. He becomes free from attachment, fear, and anger. His body becomes a veritable divine temple. He radiates purity and love and becomes a source of abiding inspiration and blessing to all. We have heard from our spiritual teachers that real spiritual life begins only after the attainment of the super conscious state. And there's a footnote. Swami Brahmananda says, "You must attain Nirvikalpa Samadhi, where all consciousness of duality is obliterated." Some say that state is the end of spiritual experience, but I believe it is the beginning. So this is from Swami Prabhavananda, The Eternal Companion, published 1971, page 366. But for us, that is just an ideal now, and let us not dwell too much on the ideal. Having found the ideal, let us follow the path and move from lesser integration to higher integration. We are assured that as we proceed higher and higher in the scale of moral perfection and integration, we shall enjoy greater and greater poise and harmony, peace and blessedness. Therefore, let us awake, arise and move on till the goal is reached. That's the end of the chapter, chapter 15, and it is called Integration of Personality and Inner Poise. Next time we'll begin with chapter 16, Love of God.
Thank you, Arun.
Okay. We'll chant.
So, so basically, This is more of not a question. So what you read is very nice and self-explanatory, but a lot is theory, and but experiences. The whole idea is to experience this journey. So there is no systemic way, like like it mentions that we need to be uh, in total conquest of our senses, etc. But there is no step-to-step method onto achieving this. One thing is meditation, and second thing is devotion, learning scriptures. All those things are there. But in a householder's life, right? Even if somebody does 20 minutes of meditation at one part of the day, the remaining 97-99% of the day, he has to deal with the worldly life, where you have to deal with tumulting, emotions, right? I mean, it could be you have to be angry, you have to be working, you have to do what you're doing. How can such a person even get towards any experience? Prasad sir, Lokesh sir, Arun sir, UJ sir. What I mean by this is, if you're 95% of the day is to work and earn in the worldly life, you are dealing with a lot of worldly behavior, where all the character, all the senses are not in stillness. Only 20 minutes of the day you're meditating, or 40 minutes of the day you're meditating. So will that experience be enough, good enough? Or you just have to keep the practice on and hope that someday I'll experience something.
From the Gita or something like that.
Huh?
Arun sir, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. But go ahead, Prasad Maharaj.
You mentioned the Gita, and do you have any references to share?
I'm sorry. What is that?
From the Gita, do you have any references to share?
Oh, from the Gita. Well, the only thing that came to my mind when we're talking about this ideal personality, there's a very famous last part of chapter 2, which is when Arjuna asked about the Sthita Prajna, the established person, the person established in wisdom, and which essentially describes all the characteristics. But the more important reference, so that's the ultimate ideal, but the more important reference I can think of to Prasad Maharaj's question is a part of it. Arjuna asks Krishna in chapter 6. He says, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramathi balavadhridam tasyaha nigraham manye vayo ivasu dushkaram. The mind is fickle, wayward, and it is very hard to grasp. It is very irrational and very obstinate, and it is like the wind. You can't control the wind. And Sri Krishna answers next. Asamshayam mahabaho mano durnigrahanchalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagena cha grihyate. He gives two simple prescriptions, abhyasa and vairagya. Abhyasa is practice, that is again and again and again. And vairagya, dispassion. Now both are needed, because you can practice, but without vairagya, without that dispassion. Now that is the prescription to Arjuna over there for how to get in tune with the mind. And the mind is very fickle and willing and wayward and obstinate. So that is what I got from the Gita in terms of a very direct response to what Prabhuji is asking.
Thank you. Nice. However, those two are like the principal things, right? Gradual detachment and practice. Now, like if you take a scenario that you are involved or the situation that you've spoken of, there, if you're listening to all of this, one thing is to listen to it like an ideal, right? And I'm sure the ideal always thrills you, right? What does it disappoint you, Prabhu, or does it thrill you?
No, it thrills me. The ideal thrill.
Right. So this is the same thrill that we also lived our life with, right? And some of us got an opportunity to be ideal, some of us are still struggling to be the ideal. But the ideal remains an ideal. So one thing is that as far as listening to these idealistic concepts that are placed, which is ideal for you, but for the monks in our group, for example, Lokesh Maharaj and Ujjalanji, they're not ideals anymore, they are the goals, right? But for us it's ideal, so we still are thrilled about attaining it. That is one. So that being alive is a sign that we're on the path, right? But the second is what you say, like, you meditate for 20 minutes and then for the rest of the day, you're there. Yeah. So there, the challenge is moderation, right? I'm talking of the senses and the indulgence of the senses. How much of moderation can you bring it to? To a point where how much of needless exercise of the senses is curbed. This is like the best way of sense control for a householder like us. You get my point? Prabhu, yeah.
No, I hear you completely.
Yeah. So moderation is the only tapasya right now for especially the kind of circle that you're in and the kind of involvement that you're in. But it's best, of course, not to speak for others. Always best to speak for ourselves. So in your scenario, yeah. How much of moderation, how much of non-indulgence of the senses can you deal with is going to be the mark of sense control, because you use the question, you have put the question of sense control, right?
Correct.
Ideal is ideal, and that ideal should always thrill you. As long as it thrills you, consider yourself safe. The day it doesn't thrill you, that day, that means that the intensity is reduced.
Got it. No, but what I'm saying is, sometimes you also tend to think practically, right? Like, I can run with Usain Bolt, right? But definitely I know I won't be able to race him, however hard I practice at this age. That also sometimes becomes a deterrent mentally.
Why does it become a deterrent, Prabhu? In our culture, when the soul leaves, the soul makes preparation for the next birth happen. When a person commits suicide, he commits suicide thinking that I'm done with this, I want a fresh start. Right? If that much enthusiasm is there for people of the world, where they will do puja so that their next birth is healthy, why can't we have that same enthusiasm for the next birth for spiritual progress? Why should that be a deterrent? If worldly people can continue their journey, want to continue their journey birth after birth, and if there are 100 rituals for that, where they enthusiastically participate, why can't one actually be enthusiastic about the regeneration of the subtle body again and again to continue the journey?
Got it, sir.
Right? And in the Gita, Krishna doesn't even speak of this regenerative process of the subtle body, right, to continue. He doesn't even speak of it as mystical. He says that's how it's going to be birth after birth. And time is not a constraint there. You just have to keep going.
Got it.
It's like that. See, the problem is not racing like Usain Bolt, right? The problem is living a life like him. Now that is something, for example, if you looked at probably the life of our monks here, or the life of Sri Ramakrishna, or the life of Vivekananda, it's not like you're going to crave for their life, because their life has been extensively strenuous, right?
Yes.
So it's not just aspiring to be Usain Bolt. It's like to be able to live that life, that rigor, that diet and everything. Likewise, even in spiritual life, right? So that strength has to slowly come to be able to live that rigorous life.
Got it.
So we are all in good stead actually, wherever we are.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll, if there are no more questions or discussion, we can chant the closing prayer. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari Om.